Well, we've got a wonderful, wonderful woman, Fiona Campbell, coming up next, and she's going to be talking to us about thinking about your thinking. All behaviour starts with a thought, and when you take control of your thinking, you take control of your life. Hello, Fiona.
Hello. Hello, how are you doing?
I'm great. Good to see you, Fiona. So we've got you as a licensed international NLP trainer, a background we're familiar with, a professional growth coach, clinical hypnotherapist, and leadership development trainer. We're just so happy to have you on this stage. We just want you to share your nuggets, your golden gems with our audience. Take it away, Fiona.
Okay. Hello. Hello, it's Fiona Campbell here, and I'm delighted to be here and covering thinking about your thinking. Now, this is an interesting topic because most people tend to not understand that they can actually think about their thoughts. So what I want you to think about is, when's the last time you started to listen to your self-talk? And what I mean by that, if you're going, what's she talking about? I don't know what she's talking about. I don't understand what she's talking about. What do you mean by self-talk? That's exactly what I'm talking about, your self-talk. Because all behaviour comes from a thought. That's where it all starts. Now, we cover about science changes. Neuroscience is always changing. We're always getting different figures, but it's approximately 50,000 thoughts per day that you're thinking. Do you think about 50,000 things? Do you actually do 50,000 things a day? Of course you don't. But what you do is you pay attention to certain thoughts. Now, there's all sorts of things will trigger you to pay attention to a thought. It could be something that you see, or something that you hear, or something you touch, you suddenly go, oh, and you think about something. But the minute you pay attention to a thought, something magical happens. Now, it can be magical in a good way or a bad way. What happens is your body actually starts creating the chemicals that match that thought. So if you suddenly get a thought about being frightened about something, or, oh, that bus was really near, or that car was really near, your body instantly releases all the chemicals to take you into that state of survival. So it's an incredible system that we have, the response that we have with our thoughts to the physiology, the chemicals in our body. But what is really, really fascinating is that your brain, I don't know if you ever thought about this, but your brain is absolutely compelled to respond to every single thing that you ask it. And what I mean by that is, if you say to yourself, I'm really going to struggle with this, your body would go, yep, you're absolutely right. You're struggling. And it then creates the chemicals to create a state of struggle. When you say to yourself, this is something that's new to me, this is something I haven't done before, but I've done things previously in the past. I know that I can learn step by step to do this. Your brain actually creates the chemicals that you go into learning mode. You go into curiosity. You go into breaking things down step by step. So that every single time you pay attention to a thought, there's something happens with your body. Now, sometimes you can create a thought of being really, really motivated. You can think of something, yeah, this is fantastic, this is happening. So the thought can propel you into action, because remember, it's thoughts. The thoughts then kick off the feeling, excuse me, that comes from the chemicals, the chemical cocktail at that point of time. That produces the action or not. So think about it. You can be sitting there, especially now. This is the empowering women session, so I know I'm talking to the right audience for this. You could have been sitting at home now, maybe not so much now because we're not actually visiting each other's home, but take yourself back to when we were visiting each other's homes. You could be sitting at home, end of the week, you're really tired, you just can't be bothered to move. And then all of a sudden, you get a phone call or a message comes through to say your mother-in-law or some other person of authority in your life is coming round. What happens? I can guarantee you're up and you're brushing your teeth, washing your face, and you're cleaning the sink and the mirror at the same time. The fastest way to get housework done is to know someone's coming that you really think, oh, I need this place to be clean. Didn't matter how tired you were before, but the change in the thoughts actually changes the way you feel. Now, if I say to you, don't think of purple rabbits, or don't think of green cows, what happens? You've got to think of purple rabbits, or you've got to think of green cows, because they were in the sentence. So when you're thinking about your thinking, it's really, really vital that you understand your brain, although it's compelled to answer whatever you say to it, it doesn't know how to negate information. Another way to say this is if you just imagine I'm sitting at my computer and I'm typing into the screen, I don't want this sentence to appear on the screen. Does that sentence appear on the screen? Of course it does. Your computer or your mobile or whatever you're typing into doesn't go, she doesn't want that to appear. It doesn't have a mind of its own. Well, guess what? Your brain doesn't have a mind of its own. Your brain is responding to how you're programming, what you're telling yourself. Now, your thoughts are translated, the way you can decode your thoughts are through your self-talk. So think about yourself. I'd like you to just do a quick wee exercise at the moment. I want you just to take a nice deep breath and just allow yourself to imagine feeling really, really relaxed. Tell yourself, I know it's Friday afternoon, but I'm just going to take 2 minutes out here to breathe and relax. Just breathing and relax. That's it. And just telling yourself the words calm, soften. That's it. Are you starting to feel relaxed? All you did there was you thought about your thinking, took control of what you were thinking and changed it to what you wanted to happen, not what you don't want to happen. So let's just do this in another way. Just from taking yourself to that, suddenly think, what have I forgotten to do today? What have I forgotten to do? I know I've forgotten to do something. What have I forgotten to do? I've got loads of things to do. Straight away, just changing that thought, just paying attention to that thought, takes you in. There's adrenaline coming through your body, it's cortisol, there's all sorts of different chemicals that are taking you into a different physiological state. So what I'd like you to think about is when you're thinking about your thinking, it's actually starting to become conscious, because we don't consciously think about our thinking. Thinking tends to happen in this unconscious place out there. And one of the things that we're really doing, because this all comes, I really started learning this when I started doing my Neurolinguistic Programming training. I started to understand the importance of how I could control what I was thinking about situations based on the information I was feeding to myself. And this, it takes time, it takes practice. And the best way to start, so let's just start, I'll give you a nice sequence to start. The best way to do this is, first of all, just take a few minutes and ask yourself, okay, what am I thinking? What am I focusing on? And start to listen to your self-talk. Start to tune in to the soundtrack that you're running in your head. And ask yourself, what do I think about myself? What do I think about me? Now, that's an interesting one, because you'll go two ways. You'll either be very supportive about yourself, or you may find that you're being critical about yourself. When you're being critical about yourself, or if you're being critical about yourself now, start to listen to what you're saying to yourself. Start to actually become aware of the conversation that you're having. It's called self-talk, it's called inner dialogue, it's called paying attention to our thoughts, whatever you want to call it. And listen to the tone of voice you're speaking to yourself in. What are some of the things you're telling yourself? Okay. If you're finding that you're being very critical with yourself, what you can do is you can ask yourself, would I speak to my best friend about this? Would I say this to my best friend? Would I say this to my child? Would I say this to my partner? Would I say this to anyone, any of the colleagues that you work, anyone you work with? Probably not. Now, what you can also do, you can also listen to the tone of voice that you're speaking to in yourself. Become aware of your tone. Are you being helpful, or are you being really nasty with yourself? So we can do two things. We can either change what you're saying to yourself, or you can just change your tone of voice. Changing your tone of voice is enough to change your physiology. So if you're saying, oh, I'm really uncomfortable, I don't like myself, I'm hopeless at this, I'm hopeless at that, I'm hopeless at the next thing, and it's a moaning tone of voice, you can start to say, I'm really hopeless at this. I'll never be able to get the life I want. I will never, and say it with a smile. Actually, when you turn up, this is another little secret. If you just turn this, now that's not a real smile. See the difference? A real smile, that's a smile. A fake smile is that. But guess what? Your brain doesn't know the difference. If you move the muscles here, just this movement with the muscles actually starts releasing serotonin and dopamine. It releases the chemicals that make you feel good. So just sometimes doing that and holding it for long enough so you start to feel yourself actually changing. You feel the chemicals in your body changing. So you can still be saying the same thing to yourself, but saying it with a smile and saying it with a smile in your voice. And that will change how you feel. I'm going to teach a couple of techniques to help you stop self-talk. Because, and I'm talking about unresourceful self-talk. You want to keep talking to yourself about the good stuff. You want to keep telling yourself you're fabulous. You want to keep telling yourself you're confident. You can do anything you put your mind to. There's no way you would stop that self-talk. You keep that going. This self-talk, the self-talk's your thoughts. And it's just teaching yourself, it's becoming conscious about changing these thoughts, taking control of these thoughts. So sometimes you can have this stream of stuff going on and you're trying to change it, you're trying to do all sorts of things. One of the things you can do is tell yourself, and please, please, please do this silently and mentally, because we don't want you walking about going, stop, and shouting out loud. Just shout to yourself in your head, stop, and make it really strong. Make it really a command, stop. And when you give the command stop to your brain, guess what happens? Your brain, for a few seconds, will stop thinking. It's just, you've just told it that all you have to do is the word stop, say it really strong. Now, if that's all you do, eventually you're going to start talking to yourself again, and you're going to start the same rubbish. This is all going to happen again. So what you do is you say stop, and then you put something in that you want. So I will say things like stop, breathe. So if you've got yourself all wound up about something and you're still, this pandemic will never finish and we'll never get a job or whatever you're saying. Break the pattern. Tell yourself to stop and breathe. And guess what? Because you're controlling that thought, your body follows. You breathe. And when you breathe, you calm down. And when you breathe, you give yourself thinking room. You give yourself a little bit of space. And it can be stop, focus, stop, listen. Because one of the things, a lot of the work I do is all around communication and really getting behind what people are saying. And one of the things we come across a lot is people are so busy in their thoughts, in their heads, that they're missing everything that someone is saying. So if you want to become really charismatic, if you want to be able to really build rapport with people, if you want to be able to really connect with people, whether it's online or whether it's face to face, people respond incredibly when you listen to them. And you cannot listen to someone if your head's going at 200 miles an hour. I don't know what my opinion is. All this noise that's in your head that's preventing you from even starting to listen to what someone's saying. Because when you're really talking to someone, when you're really connecting with someone, conversation's a two-way process. And a really good conversation happens when someone is really responding to what you've just said. So whatever you're saying, that person has listened, has understood, and they're feeding back. They're part of that. They're not just coming in with something that just sort of mismatches, because a lot of the time that's what conversation is about, it's all mismatching. So thinking about your thinking and taking control of your thinking allows you to do so many things. It allows you to really stop and listen. Because one of the things we get a bit frightened of, I've seen this, and especially women, I do a lot of work with women in business, I do a lot of work with senior women leaders. A lot of things that women tend to be frightened of is silence. When someone is being silent, when you're speaking to them, they're thinking. It's not silent in their head, in their inside world. So inside their head, they're busy, they're talking, they're they're thinking about, oh, what's that? Then they maybe get into feelings, then they may be saying something, and there's all this information, all this busyness is going on. But meanwhile, on the outside world, that's anything outside your skin. So if you're talking to someone, you're in their outside world. So while all this busyness is going on inside their head, sit it. Let them think. Let them think about their thinking. Let them process and look for whatever they've got to look for. Let them search and do whatever they're doing. Let them come up with their answers. Those of you who do coaching, this is the secret of good coaching. I do a lot of executive coaching, and this is the secret of good coaching, is to really let somebody talk and think. But while they're doing that, you sit and watch them. Now, I don't know if I'm just going to take my glasses off for this. I don't know if you know about neurolinguistic programming, but one of the things that neurolinguistic programming is basically, it's the methodology of how we create behaviour. And it's how we create behaviour on the outside world, that's everything, in my opinion, outside your skin, and in the inside world. So it's also the study of excellence, how people do something in a very excellent way. Now, normally what we're doing when we're looking at excellence outside of the world of NLP is we're looking about how someone is, we're looking at what we can see and what we can hear. So that's so it's the outside. We're looking at someone, and in this outside world here, We're looking to see, right, how do they sound? How are they standing? What words are they saying? Where are their eyes? What eye contact are they giving? How are they smiling? All of this is going on. But there's a whole other part, which is the inside world, the part inside someone's skin. What are they thinking? What are they seeing? What are they hearing? What are they feeling? So within NLP, within Neurolinguistic Programming, we bring all of these together to call what I call it success strategies or success recipes, if you like, where we get the inside and the outside. Because once you actually get someone to think about their thinking, that is often the key to finding where they're struggling. So let me give you an example for a presentation. Say someone that's doing a presentation, someone that's asked to do a presentation. You can send someone to as many presentation skills training as you want. And as long as it's only focusing on how they're looking, how they're sounding on the outside world, yeah, you'll get a success. But you won't get 100% success. The only way to get 100% success with someone is to start identifying what they're thinking and what they're saying to themselves. Because what they're saying to themselves is actually affecting how they're coming across. So if I'm going about to do a presentation, I go, oh, nobody will like me, no, there's nobody here, nobody will be enjoying this, this is terrible, if I'm running that in my head, at some level, everyone in an audience will pick that up at the unconscious level. People who are good at presenting, when you ask them, what do you think about when you give a presentation? They'll say things, well, I think that I've done my homework, I've done my rehearsal, and I know that I've got some information to pass on that people are finding valuable. I know that people will pay attention. I also know that what I'm passing on will not fit to everyone. So I've worked with loads of people in presentations, and I've asked really good presenters. I've modelled them to find out, what are you thinking? What are you going? And in every case, they're really thinking about their audience, and they're thinking about the whole thing of passing on information. They're not thinking about themselves. They're not in their own inner world, really criticising themselves and beating themselves up. So a way around this, let me just, sorry, I was going to say something about the eyes. When you're talking to somebody and they're doing this and this and this and this, when their eyes are going up, they are accessing pictures in their own inside world. When they're looking side to side, they're accessing auditory in the soundtrack of the inside world. And when they're looking down, they're accessing their feelings and also talking to themselves. So the key is, when you're asking someone about something and you're really thinking about thinking, watch their eyes. As long as this is going on, they're thinking, they're searching. So don't speak at that point of time. Give them time to complete their search. And once they complete their search, then you can go on to the next thing. So it's really understanding this whole thinking about your thinking. I've actually developed the RAFT model, which works with results. So you start with a result. So for example, someone set out to achieve something that they couldn't do. So you will then ask them, okay, what actions did you take or not to achieve that result? The result and the actions are the outside world. Then you go further, you say, okay, how did you feel about that? And what were you saying to yourself? What were you thinking? What were your thoughts? And the important thing is here was, how are you feeling about that? Because people will say things like, I felt as if I was going round in circles. I felt as if I was hitting my head against a brick wall. I felt as if I was scattered and all over the place. That's not describing emotions, but my goodness, it's letting you know what they're thinking in the inside world. So it's understanding that the more you start to think about how you're thinking and that you understand you can control that. If you start to notice that you're thinking about something that it's not serving you well, it's not resourceful, it's not allowing you to go into the state that you need to do whatever you're doing, you can change that. And you can change it to something you want, not something you don't want. Because it's not going to serve you well if you're presenting and you say to yourself, I don't want to be nervous. Remember, don't think of purple rabbits. I don't want, be nervous is in the sentence. Therefore, you're going to feel nervous. The brain's not going to go, ah, she doesn't mean to be nervous. So instead of saying, I don't want to be nervous, you can say something like, I'm fully prepared. I've done my homework. I'm as ready as I'll ever be. Something that actually fits with how you want to be. So to just finish up, because we're just finishing up in a couple of moments here, what I'd like you to do after this session here, when you get time, is actually maybe take 5 or 10 minutes to sit down someplace quiet and really tune into your thinking. Tune into some of the things you're saying to yourself. And some people say, but I never hear what I'm saying to myself. It's there. We're talking to ourselves all the time. It's just a skill, it's practice, that you'll start to tune into what you're saying to yourself. If you find that what you're saying to yourself, especially if you're asking yourself about how do I come across, what do I think of myself, if you're beating yourself up, change it. Start speaking to yourself kindly. Start thinking kindly about yourself. So rather than saying, I'm no good at this or I'm no good at that, you can turn around and say, I can learn to do this. I've learned to do things before, step by step. Just putting yourself into the state of learning, a state of feeling good, is enough to change your physiology, to change how you feel, and to change the chemicals. So I hope you found this useful. I hope you've found something that you can take away with this. It takes time, but believe me, once you start thinking about your thinking, the next step to say to yourself is, okay, what do I need to do next? In fact, one last tiny little technique is, if you're being really unresourceful, press your tongue against the back of your teeth and notice what happens to your self-talk. It stops. Just doing that will stop yourself. It stops all this self-talk. And the reason for that is, on a microscopic level, every time you're talking to yourself, the tongue is moving. So when you bring your tongue to a stop, it's absolutely a way that you can actually stop the self-talk. Once you have managed to stop the self-talk, you have to replace it with something else. Okay, I believe my time was up. This is me just coming to the end of this now. So we'll see if there's any of the other guys there.
Fantastic.
Fiona, some great tips there for us.
Do you have any questions before we finish?
Well, do you have any questions, Sarah?
No, I'm just a lady of your own heart. It's very much what we practice ourselves, but as well, we also find that sometimes we do fall back and let our language drop. And unconsciously, we do it.
Me too.
And then, I shouldn't have just said that. But yeah, the way you explain it is just so beautiful. It is just, wow, I'm just like that. And then my internet dropped out and I was like, oh my God, I've got to go back, So no, and I just love this. Cut that.
Just and what you can do, you can learn to do that so your mouth, no one sees that you're doing it, but it stops, especially if you do that, then breathe. Or focus and listen. Now, I've been doing this for 30 years. I've been using NLP for 30 years. I was trained by Richard Bandler, and I've been on many of the different trainings with lots of different people. But for me, understanding that you can control your thinking was that just blew me away 30 years ago, and it completely changed my life.
Yeah.
And I know now, as an empowered woman in her late 60s, I'm only warming up.
Yeah.
And that comes from what I'm telling myself.
Yeah.
It is. It is going back, and I've gone back to Richard's training every year for about 6 years, and then I also go back and train with his trainers and learn something new every time. And people say, "Why do you do it?" And I'm like, because I'm in a different mind state. I've shifted forward, and I'm picking up more and more. But no, that was absolutely fantastic. So many tips there, and I just love this. I'm going to be doing it now.
That was it for me. I love it. So if anyone wants to connect with Fiona Campbell, her details are there. She's at theprofessionalgrowthcompany.com. So go check her out, see what she has on offer, and, you know, we'll grow together and we'll get to where you are.
Yeah.
Of course you will. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Okay, and enjoy the rest of the expo, okay?
Absolutely.